Did Meghan Markle just delete the proof that everyone's been whispering about? The photos that could rewrite parts of her royal story, gone in an instant. Social media scrubbed. Yacht shots vanished. And all because a veteran royal photographer decided to speak up. If you think this is just another royal tabloid rumor, think again. This is the story that's shaking Buckingham Palace, dividing social media, and leaving experts debating how much control Meghan Markle really has over her own narrative. It starts with a claim we've heard before. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, has long insisted that she deserves privacy, that her life is her own, and the tabloids, the photographers, the gossip, they have no right to intrude. She has built a fortress of public relations, carefully curating how the world sees her, what images appear, and what stories survive. But in the digital age, can anyone truly control their image? And more importantly, what happens when the walls crumble and the truth slips out? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Enter Arthur Edwards, a name known to every royal enthusiast. The man who has spent decades capturing some of the most iconic images of the royal family. A man whose camera has documented weddings, births, scandals, and quiet moments hidden from public view. And now, he's at the center of a storm that Meghan Markle may not have seen coming. Because Edwards didn't just take pictures. He knows context, he knows timing, and most importantly, he knows how a single image can unravel even the most carefully constructed public persona. So what exactly happened? Reports have surfaced that Meghan deleted all traces of her yacht photos. Not just one or two. Every image that placed her with Prince Andrew, gone. Scrubbed from Instagram, purged from servers. And this deletion came after Arthur Edwards reportedly exposed contradictions in her claims of privacy. Think about that for a second. A woman who built her reputation on controlling her narrative suddenly caught in a moment where her story and reality didn't match. Can you imagine the panic, the calculations, the phone calls in her PR team? And more importantly, what does this say about her relationship with the royal family and the image she's been carefully maintaining in the public eye? Now, some may ask, why does this matter? Why should anyone care about a royal deleting photos? The answer is simple. This isn't just about social media. This is about accountability, about public image, about the contradictions that come when personal desire collides with public scrutiny. Meghan Markle isn't just a celebrity. She is a symbol. Every action she takes is analyzed, debated, and scrutinized. And when those actions contradict her words, when evidence emerges that challenges her narrative, the consequences are far-reaching. Let's pause for a moment and consider the scene. Imagine a luxurious yacht, the sun setting over the water, laughter, champagne, high-profile guests. The kind of scene that photographers dream of capturing. And somewhere on that yacht, Meghan Markle, a figure who has carefully managed every aspect of her public image, taking part in a moment now deemed controversial. The kind of image that, if seen, could spark outrage, speculation, and endless debate. And now, imagine that image deleted, erased from digital history, leaving only whispers, rumors, and questions that will never be fully answered. It's cinematic, it's dramatic, and it's real. But the drama doesn't stop there. Edwards didn't just report that the photos existed. He exposed the contradictions in Meghan's claims about privacy. He raised questions the public had long wondered about, but hadn't had proof for. Was her privacy a carefully constructed narrative for public sympathy? Were these deletions an attempt to control a story that had already slipped beyond her control? Every deleted photo, every erased memory, becomes a piece of a puzzle that journalists, royal watchers, and the public are desperate to solve. And the more Meghan tries to control the narrative, the more intense the scrutiny becomes. Now, let's talk about the digital aspect. In today's age, deleting photos doesn't always mean they're gone. Screenshots, archived posts, gossip blogs. They preserve what was meant to be erased. And in this case, experts argue that Meghan's deletions may have done the opposite of what she intended. They drew attention. They fueled speculation. They created a curiosity storm that has taken social media by force. Every action, it seems, is feeding a growing narrative, one that may have consequences not just for Meghan, but for her public relationships, her reputation, and the royal family itself. And here's where the intrigue deepens. Why Prince Andrew? Why those yacht photos in particular? The connection has sparked debate across media platforms, royal circles, and online forums. Prince Andrew's own controversies are well known. His public image is complicated, to say the least. And now, Meghan Markle, a figure who has carefully cultivated her image as modern, progressive, and independent, is suddenly linked through images that she apparently felt compelled to delete. Can you see why this is explosive? Can you see why palace insiders are reportedly unsettled, why the media is having a field day, and why every social media post is being dissected with surgical precision? And just when you think the story can't get more tangled, it does. Because this isn't just about deleted photos. It's about credibility. It's about the story you tell and the evidence that tells something else. It's about the reality of being constantly watched, judged, and analyzed. And in Meghan Markle's case, it's about the delicate balance between her desire for privacy and her unavoidable role as a public figure. How do you maintain that balance when even your deleted photos become headlines? When every move is dissected by people who know exactly how to read between the lines? Here's the kicker. The public's reaction has been polarized. Some defend her actions, claiming she has every right to delete what she wants. Others see it as evidence of something deeper, something strategic, something calculated. Every social media comment, every tabloid headline, every news article adds layers to the story. And it's that complexity that makes this not just a tale of deleted photos, but a narrative that speaks to power, influence, and control. Meghan is no ordinary figure. She is a symbol, and symbols carry weight. They carry stories. And when the story changes or is challenged, it ripples far beyond the individual. So what happens next? This is where you, the audience, need to pay attention. Because the deletions are just the beginning. Arthur Edwards' revelations have opened a door. And once a door like that is opened, you can never fully close it. The palace notices. The public notices. And the media certainly notices. Every deleted image is a conversation. Every erased post is a headline waiting to be written. And the suspense? It's only getting started. By the end of this video, you will see why Meghan's actions have shaken more than just social media. You'll see why royal insiders are whispering, why experts are debating, and why this story is far from over. The yacht, the photos, the deletions, it all forms a narrative that is as much about perception as it is about reality. And the question remains, did Meghan succeed in controlling her image, or did she inadvertently create a storm that no PR team can calm? But here's the ultimate cliffhanger to keep in mind. All of these deleted images, all of this carefully curated digital erasure, what if one still exists? What if there's a single photograph that tells a completely different story, one that could change everything we think we know about Meghan Markle's so-called private life? One photo, one revelation, and suddenly the palace, the public, and Meghan herself could be forced to face a reality that no amount of deletion can erase. You ever wonder what happens when someone's public persona doesn't match reality? When the image they've spent years building comes crashing down in a single moment? That's exactly what we're about to explore with Meghan Markle. The Duchess of Sussex has long positioned herself as a champion of privacy. She's the modern royal, the woman who fights for personal boundaries, who tells the world, I deserve my own life outside the cameras. She's built this narrative carefully, from interviews to social media posts, and she's enforced it fiercely. But what happens when the very thing you claim to protect becomes evidence that contradicts your story? That's the storm Meghan is now facing. The first thing to understand is how meticulous Meghan has been about her image. She knows the cameras are everywhere. She knows the paparazzi will chase a shadow. And she knows the public has an insatiable appetite for every detail of her life. So when she claims privacy, it isn't just a passing comment. It's a statement, a strategy, a promise that she's in control. But Arthur Edwards, a man who has spent decades observing and capturing the royal family, saw a gap in that narrative. And gaps, as we know, can quickly become cracks. Let's rewind a bit. Meghan's rise in the public eye has always been entwined with narrative control. From her suits days to her royal entrance, she's been conscious of the story being told about her. Every outfit, every smile, every wave, it's calculated. And when she married Prince Harry, the stakes multiplied. Now, every move wasn't just hers. It was scrutinized through the lens of royalty, legacy, and public opinion. She needed to maintain privacy, not just for comfort, but as a shield to protect her carefully curated image. But here's the contradiction. Meghan's actions haven't always lined up with her words. On one hand, she insists on privacy, yet she posts photos online. On one hand, she calls out paparazzi for intrusion, yet she participates in photo ops that are staged for maximum media impact. And that's where the storm begins. Because control isn't about perception, it's about consistency. And consistency, in Meghan's case, has recently been called into question in the most public way possible. Now, the yacht photos. These images were a turning point. They weren't scandalous in the obvious sense, not at first glance, but they carried implications. They showed Meghan in moments that contradicted the carefully sculpted narrative of privacy. Private? Perhaps. But why delete them so aggressively if nothing was at stake? Why scrub every trace online? That's where Arthur Edwards enters the story. He didn't just notice these deletions, he contextualized them. He revealed that these images, the very images Meghan had erased, were evidence that her claims of total privacy weren't as absolute as she insisted. Think about that for a second. Every celebrity, every public figure wants to control their story. But Meghan is no ordinary figure. She's royalty. Every action she takes resonates globally. So when a veteran photographer exposes a contradiction between what she claims and what she does, it's more than just a PR problem. It's a credibility crisis. And credibility, once questioned in the public eye, is difficult, if not impossible, to fully recover. Let's explore why this matters. To the casual observer, deleted photos might seem minor. But in the world of royals and media, nothing is minor. Everything is symbolic. Every post, every deletion, every staged photo or hidden moment speaks volumes. The act of deleting can communicate guilt, fear, strategy, or calculation. It invites speculation, fuels discussion, and creates a narrative of its own, one that can spiral out of the original intent. Meghan's privacy claims suddenly face a litmus test. Do her actions align with her words? Or is the narrative more performative than authentic? Here's a surprising fact. Deleting images in the digital age rarely achieves true erasure. Screenshots, archiving tools, and even the simple memory of social media users mean that nothing is ever completely gone. In Meghan's case, the deletions likely drew more attention than the photos ever would have. People noticed. Media outlets noticed. Royal watchers noticed. Every attempt to hide or control the narrative paradoxically amplified it. And that amplification created the perfect storm. The very storm that Edwards' revelations poured gasoline on. It's also worth noting the psychological angle here. Why delete images if there's nothing to hide? Why erase digital history so completely? Experts in public relations and social media strategy argue that such actions are rarely about privacy alone. Often, they are about narrative control, about shaping perception, and, in some cases, about mitigating anticipated fallout. Meghan's deletions weren't passive. They were deliberate. But deliberate actions can backfire when they contradict previously stated principles. And that contradiction is what the public, the media, and the palace are now examining with microscopic attention. Let's talk about perception versus reality. Meghan has cultivated a modern, independent persona, one that suggests a life untethered from the pressures of traditional royal expectations. But deleted yacht photos suggest a different reality. They suggest awareness, careful monitoring, and a reactive approach to media exposure. This isn't someone who is casually private. This is someone strategically managing what can and cannot be seen, someone operating in a constant tension between authenticity and image. And it's precisely this tension that creates the intrigue, the drama, and the headlines we're seeing now. Consider the irony. The very tools Meghan has used to craft her image, social media, public statements, interviews, have become the instruments of scrutiny. The more she emphasizes privacy, the more deletions and erasures become newsworthy. The more strategic her moves, the more they are analyzed. And the more inconsistencies emerge, the more her narrative is challenged. It's a cycle that feeds on itself, where perception and reality are constantly at odds, and where every action invites scrutiny rather than silence. Now, imagine the palace perspective. Insider accounts suggest a mix of frustration and caution. Privacy claims are tricky in the best of circumstances, But when they collide with public deletions that link a royal to controversial figures or events, the implications grow exponentially. How does one respond? How do you maintain decorum and silence when a story is viral, when images have vanished, but the questions remain? Every palace aide, every media liaison, every legal advisor would know. The stakes are higher than just a deleted photo. This is about credibility, legacy, and control. And here's where the emotional beat hits. For Meghan, it's not just a PR issue. It's personal. Her public identity, her privacy, her choices, they are being dissected in real time, globally. Imagine the pressure. Imagine knowing that every deletion you make might spark headlines rather than prevent them. Every carefully considered move becomes a double-edged sword. And every contradiction between what you claim and what's revealed becomes magnified. That's the reality of being a modern royal. That's the perfect storm Meghan Markle has found herself in. Finally, let's circle back to the audience. Ask yourself, if someone you trusted to protect their privacy suddenly deletes evidence, what would you think? Would you be suspicious? Curious? Outraged? That's exactly the reaction this story is provoking. And that reaction isn't accidental. It's the natural result of the contradictions, the deletions, and the revelations Edwards has brought to light. It's the human side of media scrutiny, the emotional heartbeat behind royal headlines. So where does this leave us? Meghan's claims of privacy, once her armor, are now under scrutiny. Her deleted images, instead of concealing moments, have amplified questions. And Arthur Edwards, the man who has spent decades observing royal behavior, has exposed a tension between narrative and reality that the world is now watching unfold. Every detail, every deleted photo, every contradiction is a piece of a puzzle that only grows more complex by the day. And here's the cliffhanger to end this chapter. While Meghan scrambled to erase the digital footprints, one image, or perhaps one witness, might exist that challenges everything she's tried to protect. One photograph that could redefine the story, rewrite the narrative, and leave both the public and the palace questioning what they really know about Meghan Markle. Because in the world of royalty, privacy, and media, sometimes one image is all it takes to change everything. And what comes next could shock even those who think they know the truth. Who is Arthur Edwards, and why does his opinion matter more than anyone else's in the world of royal scrutiny? If you've ever wondered how some people seem to capture the truth behind royal facades, the answer often starts and ends with him. Arthur Edwards isn't just a photographer, he's an institution. A man whose camera lens has chronicled decades of royal life, from intimate family moments to public spectacles, from scandalous missteps to heartwarming gestures. And now, he's at the center of a storm involving Meghan Markle, one that could shake the very narrative she's fought so hard to control. To understand Edwards' authority, you have to understand his career. He didn't just pick up a camera one day and start following the royals. He started as a young photographer, ambitious and eager, chasing stories, learning angles, and gaining trust. His persistence and skill earned him access that few outsiders could ever hope for. Over the years, he became not only a chronicler but also a confidant in certain circles, someone the royals tolerated because his images were honest yet respectful, balanced yet revealing. His photographs carry weight because they are not just pictures. They are context, timing, and subtle storytelling captured in a single frame. Think about it. Every royal wedding you've seen in the past few decades, every baby announcement, every smile or awkward glance, there's a good chance Arthur Edwards was there behind the camera. He doesn't just snap photos. He reads people. He understands body language, family dynamics, and the unspoken codes of royal life. And when someone like Meghan Markle comes along, someone whose every move is dissected, Edwards doesn't just see the surface. He sees the subtext. He notices inconsistencies between public statements and private actions, between curated images and reality. Here's where it gets interesting. Edwards' perspective isn't just informed by his camera, it's informed by experience. He's observed decades of media strategy, PR spin, and the delicate balancing act that royals perform between tradition and modern scrutiny. He knows when a smile is genuine, when a gesture is calculated, and when a deleted photo is more than a deletion, it's a signal. And that's exactly what happened with Meghan Markle. The yacht images, the deletions, the sudden absence from social media. Edwards didn't just note the missing photos. He recognized the pattern, the deviation from expected behavior, and he knew it was significant. Now, consider the psychology behind that. Edwards has spent a lifetime building relationships with royals. He's earned access by proving that his work captures truth without sensationalism. That credibility is rare, especially in a world saturated with paparazzi and clickbait journalism. So when Edwards speaks, people listen, not because he seeks attention. Arthur Edwards also carries an uncanny ability to contextualize events in a way that most photographers cannot. A photo is never just a photo to him. It's a narrative. The angle, the timing, the expressions, all of it tells a story. And in the case of Meghan Markle, he noticed something that many others overlooked. A series of actions, deletions, statements, social media edits, pointed to an underlying tension between Meghan's public persona and her private behavior. To the casual observer, it might seem trivial, but Edwards knew better. To him, this was a crack in the carefully constructed narrative, a moment where reality began to diverge from image, and a storm was inevitable. And let's not underestimate the weight of his credibility in this context. When Edwards speaks, tabloids, analysts, and even royal aides take note. His reputation is built on accuracy and timing. He doesn't sensationalize. He observes, reports, and sometimes lets the truth speak for itself through images. That's why his involvement in Meghan's deleted photos story carries such force. This isn't a random blogger claiming she erased posts. This is a man whose lens has captured history, whose judgment is trusted by insiders, and whose revelations can shift public perception overnight. Here's an anecdote that illustrates his influence. Decades ago, during a high-profile royal scandal, Edwards captured a single photograph of a member of the royal family at an unguarded moment. The image was subtle, almost innocuous, yet it contradicted the official narrative of the time. Within hours, it became a pivotal piece of evidence in media reporting. That's the kind of influence Edwards wields, not because he seeks drama, but because he sees what others cannot, and he has the ability to make the public see it too. And in Meghan Markle's case, the yacht photos, now deleted, represent exactly that kind of pivotal moment. Let's examine why this matters. Meghan has built her public image on the premise of privacy and controlled exposure. That narrative is her armor. But Edwards' insight exposes a tension between the narrative and the reality of her actions. The yacht photos, the deletions, and the timing of these actions suggest not just an attempt to manage perception, but also an awareness of how her image is scrutinized globally. The contradiction is what fuels intrigue, speculation, and debate. It's the perfect storm for public scrutiny. Now, think about the emotional layer. Edwards has spent decades observing royal life, which means he's witnessed the unspoken pressures, the constant balancing act, and the weight of public expectation. When someone like Meghan deletes photos, he doesn't just see a technical action. He sees stress, calculation, and the human desire to control narrative. That perspective adds depth to the story, because it reminds us that these are real people operating under intense scrutiny. And yet, the stakes are higher for Meghan because every action, or inaction, is magnified exponentially by the media, social networks, and public perception. And here's a twist. Edwards didn't stop at noticing deleted images. He highlighted the discrepancies between Meghan's claims and her actions. That's a bold move, because while many photographers capture images, few analyze the narrative implications. Edwards bridges that gap. He doesn't just document, he interprets. He sees the story behind the story, and in doing so, he revealed the perfect storm that Meghan now faces. The contradiction isn't just in the photos. It's in the larger narrative of control, privacy, and perception that she's cultivated over years. Imagine for a moment the ripple effects. The public sees Meghan as someone who deleted photos. Media speculates. Analysts weigh in. Royal watchers dissect every tweet and post. And the palace? They're watching too. Each deletion, each contradiction, each revelation is part of a larger puzzle that could have reputational consequences. And all of this stems from the insights of one man with a camera, Arthur Edwards. That's influence in its purest form. The power of observation, coupled with credibility, creates a narrative that no spin doctor can fully control. Finally, let's consider the human side of Edward's perspective. He isn't driven by gossip, he's driven by truth. He's spent decades navigating the fine line between transparency and respect, between exposure and discretion. And in this case, his professional instincts told him something significant was unfolding, something that the public, and perhaps even Meghan herself, didn't fully realize until it was too late. The deleted photos weren't just missing images. They were evidence of a tension between privacy and exposure, between image and reality, between narrative and truth. So here's the mini cliffhanger. Arthur Edwards has spent decades observing the royals, understanding their secrets, and capturing the moments they didn't want revealed. And now, his insight has exposed a contradiction in Meghan Markle's carefully curated life. But the question remains, how far does this contradiction go? Are the deleted yacht photos the tip of the iceberg? And what other truths might Edwards, or the world, uncover next? Because once a narrative is cracked, it's nearly impossible to restore it. And what? Imagine a luxury yacht, anchored off the glistening coast of the Mediterranean. The sun is dipping low, casting gold over the waves. Music drifts across the deck, mingling with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the low hum of high-profile conversations. It sounds like a scene from a movie, but this is real life. And at the center of it all, a figure who has spent years controlling her public image, Meghan Markle. Now here's the twist. Photographs of Meghan on that yacht existed. They weren't meant for public consumption. Yet, somehow, they leaked, or were at least seen, cataloged, and later referenced by royal observers. And they became the catalyst for a storm that Meghan herself may not have anticipated. Let's set the scene in detail. The yacht wasn't just any vessel. It was a floating palace of privilege. Guests included a mix of high society figures, business elites, and one particularly controversial individual, Prince Andrew. A man whose own reputation has been under intense scrutiny for years. The combination of Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew in the same frame, in the same private setting, was enough to ignite curiosity, speculation, and eventually, controversy. But it's important to understand the dynamics on the yacht. Meghan isn't reckless. She isn't the type to wander into situations blindly. Every appearance, every interaction, every photo has been calculated, or at least she believes it has been. Yet, the yacht photos suggest a moment of spontaneity, or at least vulnerability. A scene where public persona and private behavior intersected in a way that wasn't fully under her control. That's the core of the intrigue. Here's the emotional spike. The yacht images showed Meghan in casual conversation, relaxed, laughing, with no indication that the world was watching. No staged smile. No calculated pose. Just a candid moment. And that candidness, while human, is precisely what makes the images explosive. Because the public doesn't just see Meghan, they interpret, analyze, and project meaning onto her every move. And in this case, every casual gesture became a talking point. Let's explore the implications. Prince Andrew's presence alone makes this yacht a media magnet. For years, Andrew has been a polarizing figure. Every association, every handshake, every proximity to him is scrutinized. Meghan's careful image as a progressive, socially conscious figure suddenly collided with this history. And the deleted photos? They suggested awareness, concern, and possibly a strategic attempt to erase any connection that might be misinterpreted. But erasure, as we'll see, can sometimes speak louder than visibility. Now, consider the tension behind the scenes. Royal insiders reportedly observed Meghan's growing concern about the photos. Her PR team, already vigilant, must have scrambled when they realized that images existed of a moment that wasn't meant for the public eye. Each deleted post, each scrubbed memory, was a desperate attempt to regain control of a narrative that had begun to slip through her fingers. The tension wasn't just external, it was internal, strategic, and urgent. Here's a surprising fact. Yachts, while luxurious and private, are paradoxically public. Everyone on board is under scrutiny, from crew members to guests. And in the age of smartphones, leaks are almost inevitable. The very nature of exclusivity makes documentation tempting and, for a journalist or photographer, potentially explosive. The yacht was supposed to be a sanctuary. Yet, in an ironic twist, it became the epicenter of a public scandal. Let's delve into the psychology of Meghan's reaction. Deleting photos isn't just a technical action, it's a signal. A declaration that certain moments are not meant to be remembered. But when those deletions are noticed, the public perceives intention. They speculate. They debate. They create narratives in the absence of evidence. And that speculation often surpasses what a photo might have revealed in the first place. In other words, Meghan's attempt to protect privacy may have inadvertently magnified scrutiny. Now, add Arthur Edwards into the mix. His observations transformed this from a private matter into a story of contradiction. Edwards noticed discrepancies between Meghan's claims of privacy and the public availability, or at least the knowledge of, the yacht photos. He recognized that the deletions were more than a personal choice. They were a calculated response to exposure. And in his decades of observing royal behavior, Edwards knew that such calculations often leave traces that are impossible to erase. And there's the emotional dimension for the audience. We're not just watching a story unfold. We're feeling the tension, the anticipation, and the stakes. We're drawn into the drama of high society, public scrutiny, and personal strategy. The yacht becomes more than a location. It's a stage for a high-stakes narrative where every move, every deletion, and every revelation carries emotional weight. Consider this contradiction. Meghan is a public figure advocating for privacy, yet the very act of deleting images fuels speculation. Her audience, the media, the public, the palace, interprets the erasure as a statement, whether intentional or not. This is the modern dilemma of public life. Actions meant to protect privacy often amplify exposure. Meghan's yacht photos illustrate this perfectly. Now, let's talk about the ripple effects. The yacht photos didn't just stay online for a fleeting moment. Observers took note. Media outlets, social media commentators, and royal analysts dissected every available detail. The background, the gestures, the interactions, all became subjects of intense speculation. Every deletion, every strategic removal, only added fuel to the fire. In the world of royals, even absent images have power. They tell stories, spark conversations, and influence perception. Here's a contradiction that adds depth to the drama. Meghan's public persona is one of composure, strategy, and control. Yet the yacht scenario exposes vulnerability, a crack in the armor. The deleted images suggest awareness of risk, a reactive approach to exposure, and perhaps an underestimation of how quickly information, or speculation, can spread. This tension between intent and consequence is what makes the story compelling and emotionally resonant. Let's examine the stakes. The yacht wasn't just a private moment, it was a symbol. Symbolic of Meghan's challenge in balancing her public image with private desires, her need for control with the reality of exposure, and her narrative of privacy with actions that may contradict it. Every observer, from the palace to the public, recognizes this symbolism. And in a story where perception is everything, the symbolic weight of these photos and their deletion cannot be overstated. Now, imagine the decision-making process in Meghan's inner circle. The moment the yacht photos surfaced, conversations must have been urgent. How do you respond? Delete the photos? Control the narrative? Prepare statements? And all the while, the public watches, the media speculates, and every action or inaction becomes a headline. It's high-stakes strategy under pressure, and it's happening in real time. Here's a striking fact. Studies in media psychology suggest that people remember the act of deletion more vividly than the content itself. In Meghan's case, the deletion signals attention, urgency, and importance. The public doesn't just ask, "What's in the photo?" They ask, "Why was it deleted?" This curiosity gap is precisely what fuels engagement, debate, and speculation. And the media knows it. Every deleted image is a story waiting to be told. The yacht scenario also highlights the complex relationship between public and private life in modern royalty. Meghan is constantly navigating scrutiny, expectation, and personal choice. The photos were private, the yacht was exclusive, yet the consequences became public. This dichotomy, between what one intends and how the world perceives it, is central to understanding the stakes in this story. Now, for the cliffhanger. While the deleted yacht photos sparked speculation and debate, there's one critical question that remains unanswered. Did all copies really disappear? Or is there one image? One single photograph that survived deletion, One that could change everything we think we know about Meghan Markle's presence on that yacht and her interactions with Prince Andrew? Because in the world of royals, media, and scandal, sometimes a single image is all it takes to rewrite the narrative completely. And you won't believe what she erased. That's how whispers about Meghan Markle's social media deletions began circulating among royal watchers, journalists, and the general public. And it wasn't just a few casual photos. This was a mass deletion, a digital erasure that swept across her accounts like a tidal wave. Every image, every trace of certain events, vanished. But why? And what exactly did she remove? These are the questions that have both the palace and the public on edge. Let's start with the obvious. Meghan is no stranger to social media strategy. From the early days of her public life, she understood the power of the digital sphere. She used it to shape narratives, share moments selectively, and cultivate an image of modern royalty that the public could admire or critique. Every post, every caption, every story was a decision. And when she decided to delete content en masse, it wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. Now, the scale of this deletion is staggering. Reports indicate that dozens of posts, including images and stories featuring Meghan and Prince Andrew aboard that yacht, were removed simultaneously. Instagram, her official social channels, private archives, everything connected to that event was purged. And timing? That's crucial. These deletions followed closely after Arthur Edwards publicly exposed contradictions in her privacy claims. The sequence suggests a reaction, an attempt to regain control over a narrative that had begun to slip away. Think about the implications. Deleting one or two photos is normal. Everyone does it. But when you systematically remove dozens of images connected to a specific event, it raises questions. What was in those photos? Why were they targeted for deletion? And most importantly, what does that say about the story Meghan wants the public to believe versus the reality that exists? These aren't just technical actions. They are strategic, intentional, and revealing. Here's the emotional spike. The very act of deletion sends signals. It tells the public, something exists here. Something important. Something you shouldn't see. And in the digital age, deletion rarely silences curiosity. On the contrary, it amplifies it. Every missing post becomes a headline. Every scrubbed story a talking point. And that amplification is precisely why Meghan's mass deletion has become such a focal point for media analysis. Let's explore what was actually deleted. Sources suggest that the bulk of the removed content included photographs capturing candid moments on the yacht with Prince Andrew and other high-profile guests, behind-the-scenes images showing Meghan in relaxed, unguarded interactions, moments that contrast sharply with her public composure. Any digital traces that could link her directly to controversial figures, events, or narratives that the palace would rather avoid. The pattern is clear. This wasn't random. This wasn't casual. This was targeted erasure, focused on moments that could be perceived as damaging, contradictory, or simply inconvenient. And in the world of royalty, where perception is reality, that's an incredibly high-stakes move. Here's a surprising fact. Digital deletion does not guarantee erasure. In fact, the act of deleting often leaves a digital footprint. Cached versions, screenshots, and social media archives mean that nothing truly disappears. In Meghan's case, observers immediately began speculating whether copies of the yacht images survived somewhere, whether in media databases, cloud storage, or the hands of witnesses. And that speculation is exactly the type of curiosity that feeds media cycles and public discussion. Now, let's consider the human side of these deletions. For Meghan, this wasn't just about photos. It was about control. About protecting a narrative, safeguarding a reputation, and navigating the tightrope between privacy and exposure. Every image deleted, every story erased, was a calculated decision intended to mitigate risk. But here's the contradiction. The more you try to control perception through deletion, the more visible the attempt becomes. The public notices patterns, analysts notice timing, and the media notices gaps. And that visibility can be more powerful than the original content. Let's break down the psychology. Meghan's digital erasure was likely guided by three forces. Fear of misinterpretation. Images can be read in countless ways. A casual smile, a relaxed pose, or proximity to a controversial figure can be interpreted as approval, complicity, or strategic alignment. Crisis management. Once Arthur Edwards exposed inconsistencies in her privacy claims, the deletions became a rapid response tactic, an attempt to regain control of narrative and prevent further exposure. Legacy preservation. Meghan has long been conscious of how history will remember her. Deleting potentially compromising content is a way of shaping her public memory, at least in her view. But here's the irony. In trying to preserve privacy and legacy, Meghan may have done the opposite. Social media users, journalists, and the public quickly noticed the pattern. Why did she delete so much at once? Became the question dominating royal coverage. And when the public notices a pattern, curiosity explodes. They begin speculating about content, context, and implications. In the digital age, deletion is often more revealing than posting. Now, let's look at the broader strategy. Meghan's mass deletion wasn't isolated. It was part of a larger narrative management effort. Her PR team likely coordinated the timing, the selection of posts, and the messaging surrounding her online presence. They know how to guide media attention, how to shape storylines, and how to prevent spirals of negative coverage. Yet even the best PR cannot fully control interpretation. Every action carries risk, and in this case, the deletions themselves became news. Here's another emotional angle. The human instinct behind deletion is telling. Everyone, from celebrities to ordinary social media users, deletes content for a reason. But when a public figure with global attention does it, the stakes are magnified exponentially. For Meghan, the decision to erase these posts likely involved stress, urgency, and calculation. It's not casual, it's a strategic gamble. And in a game where perception can alter public support, reputation, and even influence within royal circles, that gamble is critical. Let's examine one surprising contradiction: Meghan's claims of privacy versus her digital behavior. She spent years advocating for privacy, criticizing paparazzi, and asserting her right to personal space. Yet, the very act of deleting multiple posts draws unprecedented attention. The more she fights for privacy, the more the public observes, analyzes, and speculates. That tension, the interplay between claimed privacy and observable actions, is at the heart of this story. It's why Arthur Edwards' observations resonate so strongly. And here's the emotional spike for the audience. Imagine the pressure. Imagine knowing that images exist that could be misinterpreted or weaponized against you. Imagine having to delete posts, erase memories, and control narrative under the relentless gaze of millions. Every move is scrutinized, every action questioned. And yet, even in deletion, scrutiny persists. The irony is brutal, and the tension is palpable. Now, consider the digital forensic side. Experts say that even deleted content often leaves traces, metadata, server backups, and third-party copies. In Meghan's case, it's likely that someone, somewhere, has a record of the yacht photos. That uncertainty, the possibility that one image survived, creates the perfect narrative tension. The public and the palace both know that deletion doesn't equal oblivion, and that knowledge fuels speculation, gossip, and analysis. Here's a critical insight. Meghan's mass deletion is a textbook example of modern celebrity crisis management, but it also demonstrates the limitations of control in the digital age. Deleting content may mitigate immediate exposure, but it cannot erase curiosity, speculation, or the narrative created by absence. And that's exactly what makes this moment so fascinating. The deletions tell a story themselves, one of urgency, strategy, and perhaps unspoken concern. Finally, let's build toward the cliffhanger. The mass deletion didn't just remove images, it opened a door. A door that invites questions about what might still exist, what could resurface, and what truths remain hidden. Because in the world of Meghan Markle, the palace, and the global media, one surviving image, or one unexpected revelation, can rewrite the story entirely. And what comes next could shock even those who thought they had a complete understanding of her carefully managed public life. Have you ever wondered what really happens inside the walls of Buckingham Palace when a scandal breaks? When a narrative threatens to spiral out of control, the cameras are outside, the public is watching, but inside, the palace is alive with tension, strategy, and whispered conversations. That's exactly the environment Meghan Markle's deleted yacht photos created. Behind closed doors, the royals were watching, analyzing, and calculating their next move. Let's start with the obvious. Meghan isn't just any member of the royal family. She's a figure whose every action reverberates across the globe. When a public contradiction surfaces, like deleting photos that reveal her proximity to Prince Andrew, it isn't merely a personal choice. It's a royal concern. Every palace aide, every communications officer, every senior staff member knows the stakes. Because perception is everything. And in this case, perception was about to collide with reality in a way that could ripple through the family and the media simultaneously. Sources close to the palace suggest that initial reactions were a mixture of shock, concern, and strategic calculation. Meghan had always maintained that her privacy claims were sacrosanct, yet the deletions revealed a contradiction that could not be ignored. Royal aides reportedly convened urgent meetings to assess the potential fallout. Questions flew. How much attention will this attract? What narratives are forming online? Is this a minor PR blip or a potential crisis? And above all, how does the family respond without inflaming the situation further? Here's a fascinating insight. Within royal circles, perception is often considered more important than reality. It's not just about what happened, it's about what the public thinks happened. And Meghan's deletions created an enormous perception problem. By erasing images, she inadvertently drew more attention to the very moments she sought to hide. And the palace noticed immediately. Every deleted post became a conversation topic, a speculation trigger, and a potential headline. Now, think about Prince William's role in this. William has long been considered the stabilizing force within the family. He's cautious, measured, and highly attuned to public perception. Reports suggest that upon learning about Meghan's deletions, William expressed concern about the message it sends. To him, the act of deletion itself, especially related to controversial figures like Prince Andrew, creates more questions than answers. And in a family where legacy, image, and public trust are paramount, questions can be dangerous. But the tension isn't just about image, it's about precedent. The royal family has always struggled with managing members who live partially in the public eye while demanding privacy. Meghan's actions underscore a recurring challenge. How do you balance personal autonomy with the responsibilities of royalty? How do you respond when a high-profile member makes a move that could reflect on the entire institution? Inside the palace, these aren't abstract questions. They're crises in real time. Here's a revealing anecdote. Palace insiders describe a late-night meeting following the exposure of the yacht photos. Senior staff reportedly gathered to strategize next steps. Options were limited. Address the deletions publicly? Risk amplifying attention. Ignore them? Risk allowing speculation to spiral. Issue a controlled statement? Risk appearing reactive. It was a delicate calculus, one that illustrates just how precarious Meghan's position can be within the family dynamic. Now, consider the emotional dimension. For the royals, Meghan's deletions are more than a PR headache. They're personal. Family dynamics are at play. Trust is tested. Alliances are observed. Every action, intentional or not, sends signals. And when Meghan's actions contradict her public persona, it's interpreted as a challenge, a misalignment, or even a subtle provocation. Behind closed doors, these subtleties matter enormously. It's also worth noting that the palace is hyper-aware of public reaction. Each deleted photo isn't just a digital act, it's a narrative event. Social media, tabloids, and international media consume these moments instantly. And palace communications teams understand that controlling the narrative often requires anticipation rather than reaction. Meghan's mass deletion created a scenario where reaction was unavoidable. The palace could strategize, advise, or comment, but they could not erase the public curiosity that had been ignited. Here's a twist. Not all reactions were negative. Some insiders reportedly sympathized with Meghan's position, recognizing the intense scrutiny she faces. Privacy is complicated for royals, particularly those who have left the inner sanctum but retain high public visibility. Deleting photos may have been seen as a defensive move, a way to reclaim agency over her image. But even with understanding, the tension remained. Because in the royal family, perception is everything, and every action, even one rooted in self-preservation, carries consequences. Now, consider the role of Prince Harry. Harry has been a staunch supporter of Meghan's public image, often defending her decisions and criticizing media intrusion. Reports suggest that Harry privately acknowledged the deletions but was concerned about the broader ramifications. Protecting Meghan is one thing. Managing the fallout, the perception, and the palace optics is another. And Harry is acutely aware that public support and internal harmony can sometimes pull in opposite directions. Let's dive deeper into palace strategy. In cases like this, the approach is layered. First, assess the immediate media and social media response. Second, gauge internal family sentiment and concerns. Third, develop potential messaging or interventions that could control perception without inflaming curiosity. Each step is critical because one misstep can turn a minor story into a full-blown scandal. And Meghan's deletions, combined with Arthur Edwards' revelations, created a scenario where all three layers were activated simultaneously. Here's an ironic contradiction. The deletions were meant to reduce scrutiny, but inside the palace, scrutiny intensified. Advisors analyzed not just what was deleted, but why it was deleted and what narrative it created in the absence of evidence. In a family obsessed with control and image, absence speaks loudly. And in this case, absence became the catalyst for speculation, planning, and heightened tension behind closed doors. Now, consider the long-term implications. The palace is acutely aware that moments like these have a lasting impact. Public trust, media framing, and family reputation are all at stake. Meghan's deleted photos may seem like a small action, but in the context of royal legacy, they are a disruption. Every advisor knows that what happens today, especially in the age of digital permanence, can influence public perception for years. And here's an emotional layer for the audience. Imagine being in the palace. Imagine seeing a public contradiction, knowing the implications, and realizing that no matter what steps you take, the world is already watching. The tension is almost cinematic. Every conversation, every strategy meeting, every glance carries weight. And in the center of it all is Meghan's choice, to delete, to manage, to control, and the ripple effects are felt immediately. Finally, let's end with the cliffhanger. Behind the palace walls, discussions were intense. Options were debated. Concerns were raised. And yet, one critical question remained unanswered. Had Meghan truly erased all evidence? Or was there one photo, one trace, one record that survived? And that could turn this private deletion into a public scandal beyond anyone's control. The answer to that question would determine not just the next headlines, but potentially Meghan's standing within the royal narrative itself. And it all started with a notification. Millions of people around the world woke up to notice something strange. Meghan Markle's posts, dozens of them, including yacht photos, candid moments, and curated snapshots, had vanished. Just like that, erased from Instagram, Twitter, and other platforms. And the internet erupted. Because in the digital age, deletion doesn't mean disappearance. It means instant curiosity. Let's start with the shockwave. Social media users immediately began speculating. Screenshots, reposts, and archived versions were shared at lightning speed. Every influencer, every tabloid, every fan account dissected the deletions. What is Meghan hiding? Became the trending question. And that's exactly what happens when a public figure deletes content en masse. It's not just an absence. It's a signal that drives engagement, fuels speculation, and forces public discourse. Here's the first interesting layer, the scale of social media chaos. Tweets about Meghan's deletions began trending globally within hours. Memes were created, threads were launched, and theories multiplied. Some suggested she was covering up her relationship with Prince Andrew. Others speculated about hidden controversies aboard the yacht. A faction even argued that the deletions were strategic PR moves meant to generate attention. Regardless of intent, the deletions became the story itself. Now, think about the psychology behind this. Humans are wired to notice gaps. We are drawn to the unknown, to the absent, to the censored. And when Meghan removed her posts, she didn't just erase content. She created a void, a curiosity gap that begged to be filled. That gap amplified discussion far beyond what the photos themselves might have achieved. It's a paradox of modern media. Sometimes erasing content creates more attention than posting it. Here's a dramatic twist. Social media reactions weren't limited to curiosity. They were emotional. Fans, critics, and casual observers reacted with outrage, disbelief, and even humor. Some defended Meghan, claiming she had a right to privacy. Others accused her of hypocrisy, pointing out that her claims of privacy contradicted her selective online presence. The debate spanned continents, creating a digital storm that the palace and Meghan's PR team could not ignore. Let's break down the types of reactions. Supporters. They emphasized Meghan's right to control her narrative, protect her privacy, and manage her digital footprint. They argued that deleting posts is a personal choice and does not imply wrongdoing. Critics. They highlighted contradictions between Meghan's public privacy claims and her online behavior. Deleting posts, they argued, signals guilt, fear, or strategic manipulation. Neutral observers. They analyzed the deletions from a media perspective, noting how digital erasure can backfire by generating more attention and speculation. This layered reaction is important because it demonstrates how Meghan's deletions touched not only her fan base, but also broader cultural and societal discussions. Privacy, celebrity, and accountability collided in a global conversation that extended beyond the royal family. Now, consider the timing. The deletions occurred shortly after Arthur Edwards publicly highlighted inconsistencies between Meghan's privacy claims and her behavior. That timing intensified reactions. The public perceived a cause-and-effect relationship. The moment a contradiction was exposed, Meghan acted, erasing evidence and attempting to regain control. And in doing so, she created the perfect storm for social media speculation. Here's the irony. Meghan intended to reduce attention by deleting posts. Instead, she amplified it. Within hours, hashtags related to her name, the yacht, and deleted content were trending worldwide. Influencers dissected every angle, journalists wrote articles analyzing the deletions, and fan accounts combed archives for any remaining clues. Every digital platform became a stage for discussion, debate, and controversy. Let's explore the emotional impact on the public. People are fascinated by contradiction, secrecy, and scandal. Meghan's deletions offered all three. Fans felt betrayed or protective, critics felt vindicated, and the general public was captivated. The social media response wasn't just commentary. It was an emotional reaction, a digital reflection of intrigue, curiosity, and even moral judgment. Here's a surprising fact. Deleted social media posts often generate more attention than the original content. Studies in digital media show that absence sparks speculation, encourages sharing, and drives virality. In Meghan's case, her attempt to control narrative paradoxically created the largest spike in engagement surrounding these moments, all because the public noticed, questioned, and theorized about the missing content. Now, let's look at the role of journalists and tabloids. Mainstream media quickly picked up on the deletions, framing them as evidence of a contradiction between Meghan's public privacy claims and her private actions. Headlines were dramatic. Meghan Markle erases yacht photos. What is she hiding? Privacy or PR? Meghan's deletion sparks debate. Royal contradictions. The mystery behind Meghan's digital cleanup. These stories amplified the social media frenzy, creating a feedback loop where deletion led to coverage led to debate, and debate intensified the public's interest. Here's another layer: memes and humor. Social media users created a flood of content poking fun at the deletions, exaggerating scenarios, and imagining absurd outcomes. These humorous interpretations may seem trivial, but they are a crucial part of modern virality. Humor spreads attention, reinforces narratives, and keeps the conversation alive long after the original posts were deleted. In essence, Meghan's attempt at privacy inadvertently fueled a cultural moment that blended scandal, analysis, and comedy. Now, consider the internal dynamics for Meghan's team. PR advisors were likely working around the clock, monitoring reactions, analyzing engagement, and planning responses. But social media moves faster than strategy. The sheer volume of posts, threads, and speculation meant that controlling the narrative became increasingly difficult. Every deletion, every clarification, every statement was scrutinized, debated, and dissected almost instantaneously. Here's a critical insight. The social media chaos underscores a central tension in Meghan's story: the gap between intention and outcome. Her intention was control, privacy, and strategic management. The outcome: global attention, viral discussion, and intensified scrutiny. That tension drives the drama, fuels headlines, and keeps audiences captivated. It's a perfect example of how modern public figures navigate the impossibility of total control in a digital world. Finally, let's end this chapter with a cliffhanger. As social media buzzed, one curious follower discovered something unexpected: a single, surviving image. One photo that hadn't been deleted, one glimpse into that yacht moment that Meghan had tried so hard to erase. And that single image had the potential to turn speculation into reality, to escalate intrigue, and to challenge everything Meghan thought she controlled about her digital footprint. From the moment Meghan Markle's yacht photos vanished from social media, the press went into overdrive. Newspapers, online outlets, and television programs couldn't contain themselves. This wasn't just another royal story. It was a perfect storm: deletion, contradiction, intrigue, and speculation, all wrapped around one of the most scrutinized figures in modern history. Here's the first shock. Tabloids framed the deletions as explosive evidence of hypocrisy. Headlines screamed across the globe: Meghan Markle erases yacht evidence. Privacy or cover-up? Digital cleanup sparks royal drama. Meghan's deleted photos reveal contradiction between word and action. Each article was carefully designed to provoke outrage, curiosity, or fascination. And social media amplified it further, creating an unstoppable feedback loop. But the response wasn't limited to tabloids. Serious newspapers and magazines weighed in as well. Outlets like The Guardian, The Telegraph, and the BBC analyzed the deletions from a media ethics and celebrity behavior perspective. Articles dissected the psychological impact of deletion, public perception, and the modern paradox of privacy versus exposure. Some even framed it as a case study in digital age image management. Suddenly, Meghan's social media choices were being debated not just as gossip, but as cultural commentary. Now, think about the dynamics inside a newsroom. Editors were on edge. Royal correspondents scrambled to confirm details. Headline